And we'll do a screen share and also share sound. All right. So, Omagyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshormilatanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we're continuing with our reading and discussion of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We've reached chapter 17, which is titled in our edition, Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga, the three types of faith. What is the title in Srila Prabhupada's edition? Do you have it in front of you, Radhana Rupini? Okay, well, let us know when you have it, no problem. Every edition has different titles for these chapters. Okay, so the three types of faith. And so we're still in some discussion of the three modes of material nature, which, as we've, been repeating, is not ultimately our interest, our subject matter, but it's a something that helps us understand the nature of this world and something that gives us some guidelines to try and live by to create a strong foundation for our culture of the nirguna, right? Ultimately, we want to go beyond any type of guna, mundane quality, whether in goodness, passion, or ignorance. So we can listen to our Gurudev chanting. Oh, yes.
Chapter 17 is the division of faith.
Division of faith. Okay, so more or less the same. Okay. So let's hear our Gurudev chanting these verses. We'll go through the first 10.
अथ सप्तदशोऽध्याय श्रद्धात्रय विभाग योग अर्जुनुवाच ये शास्त्रविधिमुत्सृज्य जजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विता तेषां निष्ठा तु का कृष्ण सत्त्वमाहो रजस्तम श्रीभगवानुवाच त्रिविधा भवति श्रद्धा देहिनां सा स्वभावजा सात्विकी राजसी चैव तामसी चेति तां शृणु सत्तानुरूपा सर्वस्य श्रद्धा भवति भारत श्रद्धामयो पुरुषः जो यश्रद्ध स एव स यजन्ते सात्विका देवान् यक्ष रक्षांसि राजसा प्रेतान् भूतगणांश्चन्ये यजन्ते तामसा जना अशास्त्रविहितं घोरं तत्पन्ते ये तपोजनाः दम्भाहंकार संयुक्ता कामराग बलान्विता कर्षयन्तः शरीरस्थं भूतग्राममचेतसः माञ्चैवात्मान्तः शरीरस्थं तान् विद्धासुरनिश्चयान् आहारस्तपि सर्वस्य त्रिविधो भवति प्रियः यज्ञस्तपस्तथा दानं तेषां भेदमिमं शृणु आयुष्सत्त्वबलारोग्य सुख पृथिवीवर्धना रस्या स्निग्धा स्थिरा हृद्या आहारा सात्विक प्रिया कट्टम्ल लवणतुष्ण तीक्ष्ण रुक्ष विदाहिन आहारा राजस श्रेष्ठा दुख शोकामय प्रदा जात जामं गतरसं पूति पर्युषितं च जत् उच्छिष्टमपि चामेद्धं Bhojanang tamasa priyam.
All right, so let's go through and chant these verses together. Arjuna Vacha Yeshashtra Vidimuchija Yajante Shadayanvitaha Tesham Nishtatu Ka Krishna Sattvamohora Justamaha Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Sri Vidya Bhavati Shraddha Dehinam sa svabhavaja satviki rajasi chaiva tamasi chetitam shunu sattvanurupa sarvasya shadabhavati bharata shadamayo yam purusho yo yakshada sahevasa Yajante Satvika Devan Yaksharaksham Sirajasaha Pretan Bhuta Ganam Chanye Yajante Tamasa Janaha Ashastra Vihitam Godam Tapyante Ye Tapo Janaha Dambhahankara Samyukta Kamaraga Balanvitaha Karshayanta Sharirastam Uttagrama Machetasaha Manchaivanta Sharirastam Tanvidya Sudanishtrayam Ahadastvapi Sarvasya Chivido Bhavati Priyaha Yagyastapastatadanam Tesham Vedamimam Shinu Ayusattva Balarogya Sukha Priti Vivardanaha Rasya Snigdha Stira Hridya Ahada Satvika Priyaha Katvalam Katvamla Lavanatyushna Tikshna Ruksha Vidahinaha Ahara Raja Sasishta Dukha Shokamaya Pradaha Yatayamam Gatarasam Bhuti Paryushitan Chayat Uchishtam Api Chamedyam Bhojanam Tamasa Priyam. All right. Do we have any volunteers to read? Welcome to Brian, who's just joined us. Ananda, do you want to read the translations?
Sure. Yeah, I can read. Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the position of those who worship with faith but ignore the injunctions of the scriptures? Is there faith in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance? The Supreme Lord said, faith is of three types, born of the embodied soul's acquired nature, whether good, passionate, or ignorant. Now hear of this. O Bharat, the faith of all living beings is governed by their consciousness. The living being possesses faith by constitution. He is that which his faith is. Persons with faith of the nature of goodness worship the demigods. Persons with faith of passionate nature worship the yaksha, demigods, and the rakshasa demons. While those with faith of the nature of ignorance worship the ghosts and spirits, full of pride and egoism, motivated by ambition, attachment, and power. Ignorant persons perform severe austerities, unsanctioned by the scriptures, and torture the body's natural elements and the soul within. Now them to be of
Demoniacal faith, demonic.
demoniacal faith. Know them to be of demoniacal faith. According to the three modes of material nature, there are also three kinds of food preference. In the same way, there are three kinds of sacrifice, three kinds of austerity, and three kinds of charity. Now hear of these. Foods that increase longevity, vitality, strength, health, happiness, and loving kindness, and which are tasty, succulent, wholesome, and pleasant, are dear to persons of the nature of goodness. Foods dear to persons of passionate nature are too bitter, nimba, etc., too sour, too salty, too hot, too pungent, chili pepper, etc., too dry, dry roasted chickpeas, etc., and too heating, mustard seeds, etc. Such foods cause pain, sorrow, and illness. Dear to the ignorant are foods that are stale, tasteless, foul-smelling, or were cooked the day before, remnants other than that of worshipable persons, and impure foods such as meat, wine.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, does anyone have any thoughts on these verses that we've just been through? You know, one phrase which this verse is very interesting, this verse number 3, and we've heard our Gurudev quote this verse that, Shada Mayoyam Purusho, that by nature, the living entity is faithful. Like that's just part of our constitution. We can't get away from that. right? We are by nature faithful entities. And it's just a question of where we are putting our faith. And then, and we are defined by what our faith is. Yo yakshada sa eva sa. That defines who we are. So that's an interesting point. I mean, like our Gurudev mentioned, you can't really do anything in this world without it being based on faith. You can't get on an airplane without faith, right? So everything that we do is governed by that. And it's just a question of where we are putting our faith, and there are different levels of that. And so here there's some discussion of the, faith, which is under the influence of the different modes of material nature. And of course, generally speaking, we are trying to live a life in the mode of goodness, right? Although that is not our end goal. This point is, I find this interesting too, this, how this verse here, how like there are austerities which can be carried out, but are motivated by what's saying here, like ambition, pride, egoism, power. It can actually be like, it's interesting. Like we hear of great demons, like Hiranyakashipu. They perform all these austerities, extreme austerities, but their object is something demonic, right? So it tells you, like, just austerity in and of itself, and it's not necessarily helpful, and if anything, it can be the opposite. Having these yogic powers, yogic abilities, or being able to live extreme renunciation, that can actually be motivated by demonic intent, and it's ultimately not something to be impressed by. And we saw with our Gurudev, I'm here with Jamuna Priya, she was our Gurudev's personal servant. She can testify. Like, our Gurudev wasn't impressed by austerity. That was never what he was, emphasizing. And I noted on one occasion, like some members of our mat, they would do very extreme austerity every Ekadashi, not taking water or anything. And our Gurudev commented once that, they are in their own group. He was interested in devotion, right? And if there's some renunciation that's in devotion, right, it's an outcome of devotion, and we're practicing some degree to support our devotion, then it has value. But otherwise, in and of itself, even the demons, right, they can do that. And Brian, you have your hand raised. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Krishna Vishaka. I don't know if you guys can hear me. I was having some trouble with my microphone.
Hear you.
Wonderful. Accept my pronouns. I was wondering, what does it mean to when it says the ignorant people worship the ghosts? Like, could you explain that? Like, does that have any context in perhaps the culture that's at hand, or like, I'm just trying to understand that.
I mean, I'm not so schooled in all these things, but definitely all this kind of stuff goes on. Probably Jayadev could, he's such a wonderful resource. Probably Jayadev could say, is Jayadev still with us, or did he drop out? Or maybe someone else. And there's Jayadev. There's a whole.
I'm here. I'm
goes
working on the water pump in the van. So,
Mhm.
the only thing I thought of, because I don't know, is like some of the tantric traditions. Maybe they're referencing those. I'm not sure. I know in the tantric traditions, there's a lot of like power seeking and interacting with various you could say tamasic entities to achieve power. So maybe that's what it's referring to. That's usually what I think of. But
Mhm.
maybe there's other history we don't know. I don't know.
But I mean, even outside of the Vedic culture, there's like satanic type of practices and worship, right? That goes on.
That's true. I used to listen to Slayer. It was pretty awesome.
Slayer. I don't
And Metallica. I used to listen to all that, but I didn't do any satanic stuff. Wasn't yeah.
I'm trying to find the verse here. But there's definitely a whole world of that goes on. Here we are. Passionate nature worship the yaksha demigods, raksha, and those with faith in the nature of ignorance worship the ghosts and spirits. Well, I don't know, Brian.
Forgive me for interrupting here. I just remembered like in a purport from Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami, where he says like sometimes in India people will go to a tree where a ghost has taken up residence and they'll start worshiping it. And I just remembered that. And I also have actually seen that happen. And the ghosts, I tried to mess with them because I was young. They followed me home, and in my dreams that night they beat me.
Oh,
So,
wow.
you know, I don't care if people are like, what I mean, I'm just being forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mess with that stuff.
Yeah, don't mess around with that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, we got to be careful with all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the details, but there's definitely a whole world of within the Vedic culture, outside of the Vedic culture, of, you know, attraction to that dark side. And you know, we can also take the word worship in a broad sense, right? But you know, attraction, engagement, involvement with these lower dark energies, you know, there's definitely a world of that. No, maybe not the mainstream, thankfully not the mainstream, but there's definitely a world of that going on. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more you want to get in. Oh, I see a few hand raised. Priyahita, I'd love to hear from you.
I was wondering two things. On the question Brian asked, I remember reading in one of these good books somewhere that it was explained that those wherever you're thinking of the time of death, whatever you worship, you go. So if you're worshiping the ancestors, like I would think in the Native American tradition, they worship the ancestors, and a lot of South American traditions, you know, even in Mexico, you know, you worship your ancestors. So that's where you go. You go to the world of the ancestors. If you worship ghosts and rakshas, you go there. It's very basic, like. And that was the thought, is to your association is key. You know, you who are you going to be surrounded by at the time when you leave your body? What are your thoughts going to be? You know, what culture are you going to be surrounded on? Because Krishna wants us to go where we think we're going to be happy, right? And if we, you know, spend all of our time attracting that and developing that connection, that's where we'll go. And it's temporary, of course, you know, you'll get another chance. My other question regarding Ayurveda, because I'm a student of Ayurveda, and I guess I had the question because I know that there's a lot of things that can be used in Ayurveda as medicine that would also be considered rajasic or tamasic if used on their own. Does that make sense? And I'm like mustard seed. For those with Vata, mustard seed is very good if they ever have to eat anything like that causes Vata. Add a little bit. And I'm wondering, whoa, does that make your whole offer of food? Can you not even offer anything that has that in it? Does that make Ayurvedic preparations not offerable to God? Because if you're trying to heal somebody or use Ayurveda, you are connecting with Krishna, but you're using things that in their sense might be considered mostly rajasic, not so much tamasic. But I even find in some Ayurvedic preparations there are onion sometimes. And maybe this is a polluted practice over time. Maybe, I'm not sure. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I mean, Ayurveda, as I understand, is concerned with health, right? And so for health purposes, you know, for some particular condition, then you may take something which you normally wouldn't take, right? You know, like some people may take, you know, like some of our devotees, they'll take garlic when they're sick.
Exactly.
Otherwise they wouldn't, you know.
Right.
So what did you say?
Is that sanctioned? I mean, I just, no one has ever been able to really answer.
I mean, I would say yes. I would say yes. I believe that would be our Gurudev's answer, that if it's for health purposes, and also if it's not if it's not harming you, because everyone also has their particular constitution, like for example, when it comes to drinking coffee, right? Like, like I know some devotees like like in Brazil, like I have one friend in Brazil told me, like sometimes with babies, they've got coffee in their baby bottles, and like coffee is not a big deal for them at all, So we all have particular nature constitution, and what is good for one, it's not necessarily good for another. What harms one may not harm another. So I would say for health purposes, then, okay, there's some limit, but, we do what we need to do. On the other hand, I will also add that we do have to remember Ayurveda is not always in line with the culture of bhakti. For example, Ayurveda advocates the use of tulsi, right? Tulsi has so many health properties.
Right.
But we draw the line there because from the devotional perspective, Tulasi is Krishna's servant, right? So do you want to add something?
Thank you.
So, we, like ultimately our guideline is what anukul yasya sankalpa pratikulya vivarjana. What is favorable for our devotional life, we'll do. What is unfavorable, we won't do, right? So if, taking garlic is the one thing that's going to get us better, then, so we can maintain our life, do our service, then do it, But, certain places we do draw the line, like with Tulasi.
Right.
So that would be my answer on that.
Thank you.
And I saw we had a few other hands raised. Actually, I see Radhanu Rupini's hand raised, but Z has been waiting a while. Is she still in the room? Yeah, Z has been waiting a while. Do you still want to speak, Thea?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you will tell me if I break up. Is that okay?
We can hear you. We'll let you know.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so like I'm not I'm in and out of like connecting with Hinduism or just I read the Gita and come to these meetings, and that's the main way I connect with my spirituality, but also through other just things that have seemed natural to me or that I learned from other places. And I found a great connection through connecting with like sort of ghosts and spirits sort of thing, but by accident. And reading this, when I read this for the first time in the Gita, it helped me to understand that it's okay and it has its place, but to actually navigate away and towards something else at times. And I've found that it's since I've spent a lot of time on my own or not taken, I've deprived myself of certain things that someone who lives a full, in inverted brackets, life is given. So, but that makes sense. The less distractions, the more sort of observations there are. But yeah, that was my thoughts on it.
Thank you for sharing that, Zia.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Radhanu Rupini also had her hand raised.
And then Gaurav also would like to ask a question.
Okay, wow, we've got another dynamic meeting today. Okay.
What I wanted to say was I used to work at the hospital, and so I always thought about blood products and transfusions and stuff, and I always thought, well, what happened? I asked this one devotee that I feel who was way more advanced than me. I asked this individual, I said, if I got into a car accident, should I take that blood? Because that blood is where it comes from. I don't want to say it's people eat meat and all of this, and the answer that came back to me was, you do everything to save your life, whatever it takes to save your life, and that's it. And then the story was given to me about, there was a sage and a hunter in the forest, and the sage, he was getting dehydrated, and he came across the hunter who had a leather pouch with water in it. And the hunter saw that the sage was very dehydrated, and so he said, "Can I offer some water?" And usually the sage will never take anything from a hunter.
Mhm.
It's taboo or something.
Right.
But he took 3 times. He took 3 times water from his hand. And then the hunter said, "Don't you want more?" And he said, "No, that's all I need to save my life." So we have to remember that, it's like we're not fanatic, but at the same time, it's like we have to know like what to do. We just save our life so we can serve Krishna and our guru. And if it's supposed to be, not, and if it's not, like you say, some people will have some garlic and when they're sick, and it's because it's like an antibiotic. It's better than taking an antibiotic, and then you're better, and then that's it, you're finished.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Dee.
And about tulsi,
Mm.
never cook tulsi, never boil tulsi, never make tulsi tea. Don't put her in the sun. I have so many, I love tulsi, I take care of tulsi. But what you can do is you can offer tulsi, all the manjaris you clip every day, and there's those 2 leaves, and you offer that to Krishna. And after you offer it to Krishna, guess what? It's prasadam, and you can actually take it. You can take those leaves.
Thank you, Dee, for sharing. Yeah, our principle is yukta vairagya, right? This was emphasized so much by Srila Saraswati Thakur. Properly adjusted renunciation. Anasaktasya vishayam yatarham upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagyam uchate. We see everything in connection with Krishna, utilize everything in connection of Krishna's service. So that is our main principle. So with some nice, really nice input from our group today. Any other thoughts from any? Oh, Gaurav wanted to say something. Do you want to? Oh, yes, please ask your question, Gaurav. You can speak if that works for you, or you can type if you prefer. But please speak. We're right. Is he typing?
People have to unmute themselves, maybe?
I think he might be shy to speak. Maybe he's typing something out. Oh, okay. The connection he's saying is not good, so he'll type it out. Okay. Well, any other comments while we're waiting? Gaurav.
Well, I of course went for the non-literal meaning of worshiping ghosts. That you could see that as being stuck in your past traumas and memories and not moving forward.
Mhm.
That it's the ghost of your own life that you're devoting yourself to.
Okay, well, there's another angle. A lot of scope for me.
Actually, that was for me also something, if I can chime in, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
About sometimes we create ghosts within, like we have like a funny belief system. Our own mind comes up and reasons something, actually turning into a ghost. It's a construct of the mind. So that I could see that as ghost also. Like we're creating something, and we think it's true, even though it's just a ghost.
Thank you for sharing, Gangalila. Okay, so we have a question here from Gaurav. Lord Krishna teaches Arjuna Gita in war battlefield. Is there any other reason behind it? Yeah, Krishna does a lot of interesting things. Like he was born in a prison. You know, someone I know, I won't say their name, but they were going to marry someone in prison, and they wrote to our Gurudev asking him, like, is it okay to marry someone in prison? And our Gurudev wrote back saying, Krishna was born in prison. I'll tell you who it was. So, you know, Krishna does a lot of interesting things. You know, Krishna's own dynasty, the Jadu dynasty, they all killed each other, right, in a drunken fight. You know, how many millions of people died in the Kurukshetra war? Right? And I feel like one of the takeaways here is that, you know, let's not get stuck on objective circumstances, right? But what's the, you know, God, like, for me, that is such a profound point, that God was born in a prison. Like, for me, that just says so much, you know. Dandavat to Govinda also. You know, like, and I was thinking about our Gurudev yesterday, you know, like Jamuna Priya lent me her hard drive, and I was going through many photos of our Gurudev, and it was so wonderful just to see like a day in the life, you know, a great Vaishnava saint. But what really struck me was how simply, and of course, you know, I was around for some of that time, but what really struck me so much was how simply he lived, you know, like you look in Gurudev's little spaces, and they're all like cluttered with all the millions of gifts that people give him. And a lot of them are like these tacky things, you know, like hundreds of cow cups and cow toys and all kinds of things. And Gurudev would just happily put them on his shelf, you know, and the shelf was full of all these little trinkets that people would give him. And then he also would have his shlokas up, but he wasn't living in like some fancy, comfortable situation, you know. And he was on public display pretty much 24 hours of the day, you know. But it was amazing for me just to reflect on that, how he's like, you know, he's this great Vaishnava acharya. And actually all of our acharyas are like that. They live very simply, you know, with the wealth that came from their followers. They could have had a much more comfortable living situation, but they live very simply, you know. What is that telling us? Like, reality is within. You know, reality is within. So, you know, the objective circumstances are not necessarily very significant. Reality is going on a deeper plane. And yes, now this issue with the Kurukshetra, you know, the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad, I know it's an issue sometimes, and there are some people who get really tripped up by that, right? Like, you're interested in a God who advocates war, right? That's something that it can be a sensitive point, right? In this, especially in this age. So that's a whole discussion there. And I have a few thoughts on that. One is that, you know, primarily we're interested in the eternal teachings that Krishna is giving, and the particular context, the background is not of prime importance. You know, it could come out in many different circumstances, but those teachings are timeless and universal. And so the particular circumstances aren't that important, right? That is one thing I would say. And then if we're going more to a relative, you know, because there's all, like, that's the absolute view, right? But then the relative side is also there. And then we can say, you know, it is a battle for justice, right? From the, you know, from the human standpoint, it's a battle for justice. And also in the, you know, it's a war of dharma, for upholding dharma. And it's also, as it's mentioned directly in Gita, to fight in such a battle, everyone's a winner, actually. Krishna mentions that to Gita, to Arjuna, right, in the Gita, that if you die in this type of battle, like for the sake of, you know, establishing dharma, then you'll go to heaven, right? And he tells, there's that wonderful, what is that? How does that verse go? Swarga Dwar Upavirtam, that this battle is like an open door to heaven. That, you know, if you win this battle, then you'll enjoy, you know, everything you've conquered. And if you die, you'll go to heaven. You know, it's a win-win situation. And our Gurudev pointed out in regards to that verse that the same applies for our spiritual life. You know, that in a broader sense, that if we are always abiding by spiritual principles, we always win, right? The circumstances may define us as a winner or a loser, as a gainer or a loser, but actually we're always winning, right? If we're always following truth, then we're always gaining in this substantial sense. So that's another deeper angle on that instruction. So yeah, so that's another factor for the that we can consider in regards to the circumstance of Bhagavad Gita. And another thing we could also mention, and our Param Guru Maharaj, Srila Sridhar Maharaj has mentioned this, you know, that Saraswati Thakur also mentioned this. We were discussing this here yesterday. You know, the Vaishnavas are not afraid to fight if necessary. You know, that it's not, you know, we're not actually all about peace. Like, you know, go to, you know, the Brahma Jyoti or go to Vaikuntha, you know, if you're interested in peace. But in Krishna Leela, there's a lot of trouble going on all the time. There's a lot of cliffhangers. You know, like Krishna's about to get, you know, killed, you know, every other chapter, and you know, like that juices thing. Krishna's about rasa, right? Krishna's about excitement, adventure, taste, you know, intensity of feeling, right? So it's not that we're necessarily about peace, right? Of course, we prefer that, you know, but that's not the end goal. But, you know, and we are remembering this quote of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur yesterday, at the end of his life in this world. One of the last statements he made to his disciples was love or rupture. You know, rupture, breaking, love or rupture. Anything may come, but it must be for Krishna. That was what he said. Love or rupture, anything may come, but it must be for Krishna. So we are engaged in the search for truth. That's our principle. You know, peace is not our principle, but serving Krishna, right? And following the current of truth. That is our principle. And if necessary, we may have to be ready to fight, you know. You know, the real Vaishnavas, they're not showing their, you know, they're actually concealing their power, right? But it doesn't mean it's not there. And if necessary, you know, like our Gurudev made that comment, like a cobra knows when to raise their hood, something like that. You know, like, so, you know, the Vaishnava, the real Vaishnavas, there, when necessary, they're ready to fight, you know. It's not that they're eager to do that or they want to show off in some way. They're concealing that power, right? And of course, primarily trying to keep peace and harmony. But if necessary, and they're if at the service of Guru and Mahaprabhu, then they're ready to do that. You know? So we know when to be tolerant and when not to be tolerant. Right? Everything is about proper application. So does that answer your question, Gaurava? Okay, it sounds like Gaurav is happy. And I like your comment here, Zia. This is beautiful. It's good not to not feel shame or fear about what we don't know, to show curiosity. Yes, I mean, that's beautiful. We're all students, and we can always live in the mode of a student, we'll always be in a good place. And welcome Chintamani. She's in Finland right now. Right, I guess it's evening over there. Hello, Chintamani.
Hello, Didi. I'm hiding in the bathroom at a family gathering so I can hear the Zoom class.
Yeah, you look like you look like you're at a family gathering. You're all dolled up.
I'm totally over it. It's so dysfunctional. People pretend and put on such a face. I just want to hear the Bhagavad Gita and be with the devotees.
You're hiding in the bathroom, man. I love it. So we have a very diverse group with us today. Okay, well, we still have 10 minutes left. Does anyone else want to, were you raising your hand, Priyahita?
I just had a thought, thank you, about Arjuna. And I think someone knowledgeable expressed this once, that he had to be put, even though time and circumstance when Krishna is doing something may not be the ultimate important factors, that Arjuna had to be put in that exact position as a jiva, where he was brought into turmoil about the feelings he had in order to express
Right.
right the situation we're in here all the time, and on how to and Krishna had to teach him, to see beyond the mind, to use the buddhi, to listen, and he had to be put in that position like we are. And I think that's how we can relate, as a jiva to Arjuna's plight. We can all relate to, oh my gosh, you can imagine being in that position, and it brings up everything, it stirs, no, that was my thought.
Yeah, actually, that's a really important point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That's absolutely true. We can think of the circumstances as like an excuse for Bhagavad Gita to come out. And Arjuna is representing all of us. And Arjuna is put into we're also told Arjuna is put into a kind of illusion, in that moment. And then he's asking questions that are for us, right? For our benefit. And ultimately, as it's sometimes pointed out too, the real battle's with him, right? So in the way that, there's this manifest battlefield, but we're all facing our individual battlefields, right? In our attempts for, positive, progressive spiritual life, right? We're all living our own battlefields and facing our own challenges, right? And so that circumstance there is also representing, what we're all going through in different ways. So yes, that's a really valuable point. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Priyahita. Yeah, that's something to remember. And in many ways, Bhagavad Gita it's a practical handbook, how to face different situations in our lives, different challenges and personal battlefields. So much helpful, practical guidance is there. Radhan Rupini says, our personal battlefield is in between our ears. Okay, well, just have a few minutes left. I don't know if I want to go on more in the Gita. I think we might want to save it for. Oh, and also Ramananda joined us. Welcome, Prabhu.
Dandos Vishaka Didi.
All right. Okay, Z is saying more Gita. Okay, let's hear a few more verses then. I'll go back to the screen share. So, let's see here. We went through these first 10 verses. Yeah, and it was also brought up this point about mustard seeds, being in the mode of passion. I mean, we're also following, what's been advised by our gurus ultimately, right? And we use mustard seeds in our cooking, right, in our offering to Krishna. And I would say it's about balance, proportion, and ratio, right? And that those things are being added to add some flavor, add digestive power, but it's not that's the primary, the primary element there. And another thing too, again, is we don't want to get too stuck on sattva gun, right? Many people take fermented foods for health reasons, and the thing too, right, is like growing up in the Western world, everything's already so contaminated. It's like we kind of there's often this tendency to be overly Brahminical, but that's just not our DNA, right? Or like what was it, our Gurudev, he made some comment, I don't remember what it was, but it was something like, in the West it doesn't work, like we saw our Gurudev, he like our Gurudev came from a Brahmin family, right? And he's, that's like his samskar, that's his nature. And obviously on a very subtle platform. And he used to follow a lot of these things, like he would calculate, like he had his Panjika, this little book with astrological calculations. And generally, like he wouldn't go out the door without checking that. Like if he's going to Calcutta, going to Navadvip, he would check what's the proper time to go. But he didn't, like, he would think it was ridiculous if we were doing that. That's just like how he grew up, like that's his life. And sometimes we see, like, for another example is like the Thursday Barbella. Sometimes our devotees get really fanatic about this particular time span on Thursdays, and like we're not living on such a subtle level where these things are going to affect us so much, so when it comes to like some of these foods that are being meant, like let's say fermented foods, like many people take them for health reasons, and we're not on such a subtle platform where they're going to make such a big difference within our consciousness, right? So that's another thing. And ultimately it is nirguna, right, beyond the modes of nature, and the spirit of service to Krishna. That's what we're interested in. So many of these things I take like, they're guidelines, reference points. We don't get fanatic about them. Okay, well, let's hear 5 verses then.
अफलाकांक्षी भीड़ यज्ञों विधि दिष्टो जयुज्यते द्रष्टव्य मे वेति मनः समाधाय ससात्विकः अभिसन्धाय तु फलम् दम्भार्थमपि चैव यत् इज्जते भरतश्रेष्ठ तं यज्ञं विद्धि राजसं विधिहीनम् अशिष्टान्नं मन्त्रहीनम् अदक्षिणम् श्रद्धा विरहितं यज्ञं तामसं परिचक्षते देवद्विज गुरु विप्राज्ञ पूजनं शौर्यमार्जवं ब्रह्मचर्यमहिंसा च शारीरं तपोच्यते अनुद्वेगकरं वाक्यं सत्यं प्रियहितं च यत् श्रद्धायाभ्यसनं चैव वाङ्मयं तपयुच्यते श्रद्धया.
Oh no, I muted myself. Could you hear the chanting? Okay, good. Okay.
Yes, we heard.
Okay. Okay, so let's chant these verses 11 to 15. Valakankshibir yagyo vididishto yajyate yashtavyamaveti mana samadaya sasatvikaha abhisandayatu phalam dambartamapi chaivayat Vijyate bharata sheshta tam yagyam vidirajasam Vidhihinam mantrahinam adakshinam Shadavirahitam yagyam tamasam parichakshate Devadvija guru pragya pujanam sochamarjavam Brahmacharjamahimsa cha sharinam tapa uchate Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priya hitanchayat Swajaya vyasanam chaiva Vanmayam tapa uchate. All right. Marie, do you want to read those translations?
Sure. That sacrifice which is in accordance with scriptural injunctions and faithfully performed by a person free from fruitive desire is a sacrifice of the nature of goodness. But, O Bharat, know that sacrifice which is performed in fruitive expectation and as a display of pomp and grandeur is sacrifice of the nature of passion. And that sacrifice which ignores the injunctions of the scriptures, which is performed without the distribution of foodstuffs, without uttering the appropriate mantras, without offerings to the priests, and without faith, is known as sacrifice in ignorance. Worship of the deity, the Brahman, the spiritual master, and the enlightened soul, purity, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence. These all constitute austerity of the body. Well, that's interesting. Worship doesn't feel austere to me.
You're very Brahminical by nature, Marie.
Speech which does not disturb others, which is truthful, pleasing, yet beneficial, as well as regular recitation of the Vedas. All these are known as verbal austerity.
Yeah, I would say austerity in the sense that the urges are being kept within check. The different urges of the body and mind. Yeah, I mean, actually, I wonder if Jayadev can say anything about this, because this word tapa, it's an interesting word. And like, as I recall, our Gurudev would use it sometimes in different ways. And like for example, meditate, like his meditation. Do you have any comments on that word, Jayadev? Tapa?
I believe I recall remembering hearing something that has to do with friction. Like the word tapa has to do with friction. It might have to do with fire too, I'm not sure, but it's something like heat and friction. And so the idea is we're creating friction against our like samskar by performing tapa. So actually like, and the one thing I was going to comment too, like I think that these austerities, they're also it's like in our path, we're redirecting the mind to what's positive. We're not renouncing, we're redirecting. And so I think that's like this friction, right? Against the natural rolling of the mind. You know, we're creating this tapas, this friction, if that makes sense. So yeah, I believe that. I can look it up too and see if there are any other meanings there. But yeah, those are my.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like it's like a type of resistance against the normal flow of the body and mind. So interesting. All right. Well, any final thoughts from our group today? Should we close there? It's been another lively meeting. Steve, any comments? I'm also here with Steve.
Just a technicality question that entered my mind. You said in just the first two verses, Krishna is saying that their faith is in the motive. The soul is born with faith, acquired nature, born of the embodied soul's acquired nature, good, passion, or ignorant. So, and it's then saying worshiping with faith, but ignorant of the injunctions of scriptures. So if we are worshiping with
let
faith,
me find that. What number
just the very
verse is
first
that?
the very first two verses.
Beginning of the chapter.
Yes.
Okay. And I see your hand is raised too, Zia. We'll get to you. So where am I looking?
Just the first.
Okay, the
verse.
first, yeah.
So he's
Worship
saying,
with faith, but ignore the injunctions of the scriptures.
So-
Okay.
and that faith is of three types.
Hmm.
But so is then, if we're worshiping with faith and not ignoring the injunctions of the scriptures, is that mean it's devotion, or is that like in the mode of goodness also? But
I would say faith, ignoring the injunctions of the scriptures, would be in the mode of ignorance.
okay,
And faith following the scriptures would be in the mode of goodness.
Okay.
Sattva. And then what determines whether it's nirguna, transcending the modes altogether, I would say, would be the connection of the Sadguru, the genuine guru, who has a connection with that plane. And also with a desire, like not just carrying it out in a ritualistic way, but an actual desire to please, some natural element within our heart, like that. Does that answer your question?
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, nice question. And we have a few hands raised. I think Zia was first, and then Priyahita. Do you want to go ahead, Zia? What did you want to say?
Hi, thank you. I think it was around, I feel like saying it because it's something that unfortunately I'm working with, which is austerity from sort of coming from a place of fear. So not wanting to speak to people or hear from people, as an example. Because of trauma, because of pain, not trying to understand what it is, the subtleties of interactions that rock my ability to show up for myself so much, and that is something that is painful. But whilst I'm doing it, I'm able to, that and other ways of practicing austerity, I'm learning more about myself, and I'm able to connect with spaces like this because I'm less this sort of drawn into things that aren't helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's redirecting me in the long route.
Yeah, I mean, if you're keeping your focus on the positive attainment, then that's progressive, right? It's not that it's just about avoiding something, but that you want to positively engage in another discourse, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And one thing to remember is that the starting of our spiritual inclination may be some lower conception, right? It's like someone, let's say, for example, many people get attracted to spiritual life because they're burnt out by the world, right? And that's not the end goal of this, to just be running away from suffering, but it's a starting point, right? It can be like a helpful wake-up call, but then gradually we'll enter into this vision that it's about beauty and about love, right? That Krishna consciousness is something beautiful that I want to do. It's not that I'm running away from anything else, right? But it may start out like that. Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, 4 kinds of persons approach me, right? That artha, artatika, jigyasa, and jnani, persons who are suffering, persons who are seeking material gain, persons who are curious, and persons who are enlightened. So everyone may have a different starting point, but that won't be the end goal, right? So yeah, I mean, I appreciate your comments there, Zia.
Thank you.
And Priyahita's also has something to say.
I just wanted to share, thank you, about the word tapas. personally coming from yoga. So in the Yoga Sutras, it says tapas svadaya ishvari pranidhana, and it's a progressive path for the soul. So as like Hatha Yoga is authorized by Krishna as the original Adi Yogi, because through the tapas, you're led to svadhyaya. If you don't do the initial work of tapas, which is the burning of your impurifications of the mind, through the physical movement and the breath, the whole point is meditation. It's a science of the mind. Like if you know real Hatha Yoga, it's a science of the mind, and it leads you progressively to the higher stages through tapasya to svadhyaya, which is internal study, self-study, study of scriptures. You begin to, the soul wakes up and it gets hungry, and it looks towards Krishna, because Krishna left the bread trail. He left the trail through the tapas svadhyaya. And if we continue to follow it, it's an authorized path because it will take us to Ishvari Pranidhana. So tapas, I think, is very important, especially in Kali Yuga, right? Because we're burning, everything's burning all the way outside of us, and we have this burning fire inside of us as well. And that through that, we're purified, like gold is purified. So I just wanted to share my personal understanding of tapas.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful. That's a similar progression that we see in Bhagavad Gita also. That's the course of Bhagavad Gita. And that also explains, because I seem to remember our Gurudev on a few occasions, he used the word top to mean meditation. Like he wasn't referring directly about austerities per se, but he gave some, he spoke of it in that way. So that makes sense, because as you're pointing out, the goal of that is meditation, to attain the stillness of the mind and absorption in the divine. Yeah, because I seem to remember when he made a comment like meditation was a deeper understanding of what top means. Thing like that. So that's very helpful to hear. And yes, it's, what you're saying is totally true, right? This is why we need to follow some discipline, right? Some sadhana. That's our application of austerity, right? Top, that we're trying to follow a regulated spiritual life as far as possible. Okay. Well, it's really nice input from our group today. Any last comments from anyone? And I'm here with Jamuna Priya Didi also, and Steve. Anything you want to share for the group?
Just thank you.
It's been pretty amazing being with Jamuna. She served our Gurudev for many years in India, and she's a storehouse of a lot of inside information. Getting all the secrets. Oh, it's been really cool, really, really nourishing. All right, maybe we'll close there for today. Thank you all so much for your wonderful presence and participation. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees, sincere seekers Ki Jai, Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki Jai, by Gaur Premanande.
Hari Bol. Thank you for your association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. See you all next time.